Hey, good evening, good evening, good evening to you all, man. I just want to welcome and welcome you guys back to the Conversation 9-8, and uh, glad to be back on again for another episode. And I look forward to having the conversation with you guys tonight. Again, man, I'm just thankful just to continue to be able to do this, uh, and I'm very grateful for just the opportunity to be back on before you again. Watching football today, so pretty excited right now. Team just pulled off a good one. But again, man, make sure that you share this. Let me know where you're tuning in from, and we're gonna get on with the conversation tonight. I hope all is well with everybody, um, and I'm excited about the conversation for tonight. So shout out to a good friend of mine. I was having a conversation with her, and she inspired me to have this topic for tonight. So, and I wanted to share this, and we're gonna get on and talk about it. I think the night topic is gonna be a real good one. I think it'll be one that I think we all may have dealt with in different fashions, and I feel like just the approach, just the conversation is a good one to have. Because we all go through things and deal with things. And make sure you let me know where you're tuning in from. Feel free to comment. Feel free to interact as we get ready for tonight. But again, how you doing, Miss Robinson? Hey, you got you back in Alabama and Jordan, North Carolina. I'm glad that you did. I'm glad you did. And great to have you on here for tonight. But tonight, man, it's just a real good conversation to get started. The cold weather's coming in, so if you guys getting cold weather, I know it's snowing in certain places. We're projected to get some snow next week. Yes, I did wait. You know I did. Yes, I did wait. Glad I did, though. Great ending to that Alabama and Auburn game. But man, we're gonna go ahead on and get started. Feel free to let me know where you're tuning in from. Feel free to interact and comment and get you in. And Roberta, how you doing? Thank you. Tuning in from Long Island, New York. I'm in northern New York, upper corner of New York. So we're gonna go ahead on and get started though. But tonight conversation is just basically say a wounded heart greatest fear is being held accountable for their dysfunction. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about that, I wanted to hit on that and speak on that is because, as you already know, I talk a lot about healing, talk a lot about forgiveness, talk a lot about being made whole. That's the platform that I want to present because that's something that I'm very passionate about because I love people, right? But a wounded heart, and I said before, a wounded heart sees the world different, heals the world different. The wounded heart will hear something that is not meant to be hurtful, but they're here from a place of hurt because that's where they're wired at, right? But a wounded heart fears being held accountable for their dysfunction because their dysfunction become a comfort zone, or it become a coping mechanism to them, and that's what they begin to be known by. So that's why they fear it, because they fear being held accountable for their dysfunction, and because they are being held accountable, what they fear is they have to deal with themselves, and that is what they really fear. That right there, I'm talking about in general, and you can slice it up, you can put it however you want to put it, but that is the truth, and the matter with that, because right when somebody is feeling like they're vulnerable, most time they're going to fight or flight mode, right? And when you're talking about being held accountable, when I've been hurt or when this is something that I've done as a coping mechanism or a way to me to just I done suppress this thing, Shep, and by me suppressing it, I did that to protect myself so that I can become functional in my dysfunction, right? I don't want anybody to even know I'm dysfunctional. I don't want anybody to even have to have me to force or face myself or face the reality of me, because by them forcing me to face the reality of me, that means that I got to get over my fear of what I already feel like I'm inadequate at. And that's what a lot of times a lot of people are fearful of, because of that wounded heart they have. They are afraid to face and deal with themselves. And a lot of that comes because they feel like they don't have what it takes to overcome that. Or they may feel like not only they don't have what it takes to overcome it, but they may feel like, dang, this is too much for me to bear. Right? It is too much for me to bear. And I know that is a place where a lot of people may be at, but that's not a good place. And I say that because it is what it is. But you know, I said it before, you know, we have to learn to forgive ourselves. And forgiveness is a very powerful thing. And we talk forgiveness a lot from the perspective of forgiving others, right? But one of the hardest things for people to do is forgive themselves. And the reason why it's hard for them to forgive themselves is because we are the last ones to want to deal with us. See, we can deal with what somebody else do to us easier than we can deal with the consequences of the decision of what we do to ourselves. And that can be very scary because, you know, a lot of times it's easier for me to expect somebody else to make a bad decision, right? Or expect it a hurt to come from somebody else. But when it comes to myself, right? How do I forgive myself? How do I overcome that? How do I address myself? How do I get the courage to even say, you know what? I'm going to stop. I'm going to take time, take notes so that I can address and deal with myself so that I can get over this part and it no longer becomes a weight, right? It becomes a lesson learned, right? It no longer becomes a weight that I'm carrying with me. It no longer becomes a weight that's holding me down, right? It becomes a platform or oh man, this is good. This is good. It becomes, Kirk Franklin said this, you know, Kirk Franklin said his pain was his preparation for his destiny, right? But I will tell you this, I would say in the same light, you can take that pain, and when you decide to heal that wounded heart, right, you can take that pain, and that pain become a catalyst for your purpose, right? Because there's some lessons that's learned in a place of pain that others can relate to. It's a reason why I'm talking about healing. It's a reason why I'm talking about forgiveness, right? Because I didn't understand back in 2007 and 2006 and 7 when I had the worst year of my life. I didn't understand why, God, why would you allow these things to happen to me? And the Holy Spirit kept saying, why not? Now I understand. Why? Because I can speak from a place of understanding what healing means or understanding what forgiveness means, understanding the purpose of it and the power of it, because I was in that place and I can speak from experience, not from me reading it, not from me learning it in school, but from the education of experience. I can speak from that place. I can speak from a place of knowing what it feels like to be vulnerable, right? And knowing what it feels like to feel like dang, I don't have the necessary things that I need. Because being scared, being vulnerable, right? Those things are very scary when you start talking about healing. When you start talking about healing and forgiveness, because it doesn't when you have to face that, right? When you're in that space, when you're in that place, it seems insurmountable because you're trying to figure everything out. But healing is a journey of faith. And healing has to start based off of you have to put to action even when you don't see certain things, even when you don't feel certain things. You're not going to feel it. You're not going to feel it. You're not going to feel like, hey, this is the right thing to do. You're not going to want to. It's not going to feel good in the moment. It's going to feel like somebody getting over on you. It's going to, all of those emotions and all of those thoughts are going to be there, right? But you have to look at the long end. You have to make a decision. I'm going to choose to heal, right? So that I can move on, so that my future can get better and not focus on what it feels like in your present. Not focus on what it feels like in your present. Nick said, hey, what's going on, Nick? How you doing? He said, I don't think I'm able to heal what I'm going through. This is the thing, right? This is the thing. And I'm glad that you said that. I'm glad that you're sharing, and thank you for sharing. I appreciate it, right? You know, this is the thing we have to look at. It's not about you healing yourself. And a lot of times I think that we try to do, you know, just out of a sense of comfort, right? We try to do the things necessary to try to heal ourselves, right? But it's not about you healing yourself, right? It's because a lot of times we don't have the capacity to do it. It's realizing that, hey, what you deserve, you are worthy of forgiveness, right? And I said it before, you may not feel worthy, but you are worthy and you are deserving of forgiveness. And forgiveness is simply foregoing. I'm foregoing, right? The hurt that the natural feeling of me wanting to get back at you, I'm going to forego that, right? So that it's not a burden on me or it's not a weight on me. It's something that I can choose to cut weight. And then forgiveness is you taking control of the scissors and releases yourself from the weights that you're dragging on by holding it and hoping somebody else gonna feel what you felt. Because 9 times out of 10, they will never feel what you felt, no matter how much you want them to. No matter how much you want them to. And the other thing is, and I'm glad that you said it before, and I appreciate you sharing it, right? One of the other things we have to get to a space of is realizing that, we have to get out of, when we're talking about forgiveness, we have to understand that forgiveness, true forgiveness, is not dependent on your emotional state. I say that again. We have to learn that true forgiveness is not dependent on our emotional state, because our emotional state will always manipulate us based off of where we at emotionally. And that is a dangerous place to be in, because if we want to, like, I feel like, and forgiveness is a lot of sense like love. Love is not just a feeling. Like, we have different versions of love, and we talking about, most people, they associate love with eros, right? That's the erotic. That's the root word for erotic, right? But filial or Philadelphia or agape love, the love that we're talking about we should have for other people, that's an enduring love. That's a love that is not tied to an emotions. And that's something that we have to realize. Forgiveness is not tied to your emotional state. Forgiveness is a logical choice. It is a logical choice. It is a decision, right? But this is the thing, and I think a lot of people struggle with this. But I just wanted to go on and make sure that people understand this and kind of break it down, right? Forgiveness is simply a logical choice that you choose to stay committed to the end, to see it through. Because there are going to be some times, right, when that choice that you made, your emotion is not going to line up with it. There were times where I know I made a decision to forgive somebody, but I didn't feel like I should. And there were things that I had to deal with, things that came up. They said certain things, had to interact with them, had to do certain things. Sometimes I want to give them a 2-piece and a biscuit, right? But I made a commitment that I said, hey, I will choose to forgive this person because I desire the benefit of the forgiveness in the end. But the key thing about forgiveness, and the thing that I love the most about forgiveness and my journey in forgiveness, was the fact that when I chose to forgive someone for something that was done wrong to me, right, it began to not only change how I felt, but it changed my thought process of how I saw them. And I began to see them in the hurt where they was, and it helped me forgive them. It helped me forgive them. It changed my heart. And this is, man, this thing is something serious. And I know I talk about it, but this is why a wounded heart, greatest fears, is being held accountable, right? Because this, right? Because of this, right? A wounded heart hate being held accountable for their dysfunction, because hurting people hurt people. And a lot of people don't hurt people intentionally. They hurt people from a place of hurt. I'm hurt, I'm wounded, I'm trying to survive. I'm in survival mode, right? I'm giving you the best that I got, but I'm in survival mode. Who are you to tell me to deal with myself? Who are you to tell me that I got to address me? You're not going to intrigue. You're not going to come in and disrupt the comforts that I built for my dysfunction, because that's how I survive. Even though how I'm surviving may not be good. It may not be healthy. It may be causing dysfunction and hurt and pain to other people around me. But hey, a wounded heart don't want to be held accountable for that. They fear that. They fear being exposed, because now you're forcing me to deal with what I don't want to deal with, and that's being vulnerable. But the reality is this: you will never be made whole until you embrace your vulnerabilities. You will never be made whole until you embrace your vulnerabilities. And this is the man, and that's something that I've been dealing with, like personally, really been dealing with. Like, man, hey, a lot of people may look at me like, oh man, you got this together, you got that together. No, man, I got my issues. I got things and shortcomings that I deal with, and I don't mind being transparent about it. I don't mind to sit up here and try to act like I got it together, because I don't have it together. And me embracing that really helps me just move in the confidence of, hey, I know I ain't got it together, so why I got to act like it? Why I got the front? Why I got to act like, hey, I got it, got this thing, I know all of this? No, man, there's some things, some experience I do know, right? But there's a lot of things I don't. There's some areas in my life that I need help with. So guess what I do? I humble myself and I see people that's doing that, and I go and I align myself with them. I'm not afraid of being exposed in that way. But I didn't get here overnight. I didn't get to this space overnight. No. Nick said, great breakdown. Hey, I appreciate it. My mom tuning in from Atlanta. Hey, love you, mom. Love you. But yeah, that's a space, man. And I'm very passionate about this because this is one thing that I know a lot of people don't like, but it is what it is, man. And it's time. It is time. And I know we say it all the time, but it is time. Like, too many of us are carrying things from that's been a heavy weight on our lives for so long because of the things that people have done to us. And this is the thing, right? Some of the things that people have done to you, it's hard for you to forgive the same people because you hold them dearly to your heart. But those are the same people that hurt you the most. So you're angry at them at the same time, but you feel like you don't want to hold them accountable for what they may have done to you. But now you find yourself frustrated, and now you're angry, and it's a whole mix up of things and all these type of emotions. But the truth is, you can choose to forgive somebody and still hold them accountable for what their action is. Hey, because the reality is, if I'm trying to forgive, I'm trying to heal and move on, most of the time you may not get the closure that you're seeking. Because most people are not going to be accountable. They're going to continue to be wounded ears and refuse to be held accountable for their dysfunction. Right. And I would tell you, I said this and I made a post about it. But I'm going to say it right here. People who are wounded, right, they will find anything external to find blame and point blame at as a way of them getting out of dealing with themselves. They can be as toxic, they can be as dysfunctional, they can be hurtful to other people, but they will always find ways to point somebody else with you. And watch this, most people who are wounded or have a wounded heart exhibit narcissistic characteristics. They exhibit narcissistic characteristics. They have a lot of narcissistic ways because that's their way of trying to control their environment and control the way to keep people from knowing or exposing who they are. So they build this barrier up like they got it all together. But the reality is they're a little kid on the inside wishing that don't nobody see how vulnerable they are. And they will go around and destroying people and destroying relationships and destroying good people in their life that are there for them, but they can't even see it and don't care because they're too afraid to be exposed. They're too afraid to be exposed. I just say this, a wounded heart, right? A wounded heart. Man, dang, this thing is good. Thank you, God. Thank you. I appreciate it. A wounded heart will blame you for the pain, hurt, and hardship. They will blame you for it because they are afraid to deal with why they are acting the way that they acted. They will blame you because they don't want you to hold them accountable for their dysfunction because that's forcing them to address and deal with themselves. And they don't want to deal with themselves. They want you to cater towards their dysfunction. They want you to enable them, but they don't want you to hold them accountable. And holding them accountable is just saying, hey, you are the one responsible. But with that accountability, that doesn't mean that just because, they bucking against you, we all play a role. We got to be accountable for ourselves. But a wounded heart, they will find ways to point blame at somebody else to avoid dealing with themselves. You said this is why I should stop begging and give her what she wants. Well, the thing is, and like we had the conversation before, right? The thing is, right, you got to get to a space where you got to deal with you. Right? Just deal with you. And the thing about it is take ownership of what the role you play, like what you play. And this is one thing that I had to learn. And it's something that was very freeing for me and get me to a space where I had to deal with myself. I had to get to a space where I had to learn that I had to be accountable for the role I played in the situation. Even though, right, in a situation where I ended up having to forgive somebody for what they did to me. I'm not saying I was to blame, but I had to realize and get to a space where how I enabled certain things to happen. By getting to that space, that really helped me to realize, like, dang, right, I had to dissect that thing. I had to look at it and be like, dang, I was doing what I was supposed to do, right? But then I had to realize, like, well, by me doing what I was supposed to do, right, it's certain things that I was enabling, right? So I had to deal with me and why I was doing it. Oh, I was doing it because of this. And now you start to get down to the root. You start to realize you're doing certain things because that's a way you coping with your dysfunction. And I had to get to that space and accept that reality, accountability for what I did or the role I played. Thank you, Nita. Appreciate it. And this is the thing, right? This right here, right? I know that this may upset some folks. Like this may upset some folks, like my dad used to say, but it is what it is. But right. Hey, if you're dealing with somebody who got a wounded heart and refuse to heal and refuse to take accountability and refuse to take ownership of the role they played and how their decisions and how their actions have hurt you, and they try to turn other people against you, right? And they try to convince other people and they exhibit those narcissistic behaviors, right? If you deal with somebody like that, cut them off. And it don't matter who they are. It does not matter who they are. Yes, you may have the desire to have those people connected with you, right? But there's no need to continue to expose yourself to people who don't care about the reality of who you are, don't care about your well-being, and only care about their feelings and them protecting the lie that they have convinced themselves to believe. So you don't have to subject yourself to that behavior and cut them off. And I will promise you, you'll find peace in it. You will find peace in it. You'll find peace. I'm telling you, you'll find peace. And not only you'll find peace, right? You'll find out that that's where you will find your healing. That's where you will find your growth. That's where you will find your elevation, is when you start to say, you know what, I'm not going to subject myself to that. You know, a lot of people, man, we got some bad people, man. You listen, man, this thing, I will tell you this, man. I will tell you this. Thank you, God. Thank you. Just because somebody is close to you as a relative, right? Just because somebody got close ties to you, just because they may be your mom, your dad, your auntie, your grandmama, right? Your best friend, your cousin, your favorite, you know, just because they have some type of ties to you, and it can be genetic ties, it can be family ties. That doesn't mean you have to subject yourself to somebody who refuse, right? Just downright refuse to be accountable for their dysfunction. Just be downright accountable for their behavior. And they want to blame you, blame others, and they will never take responsibility. Stop feeling like stop making their healing your responsibility. Stop doing that. Because only thing you're going to do is you're just going to piss yourself off, right? You're going to deplete yourself, and those people will take from you and will never give you what they should already be giving you. They will never get it to you. What's going on, Raphael? You speaking to how I've been feeling. Amen. To God be the glory. To God be the glory. I'm just saying, I'm just speaking that. Just wanted to say that. Hey, my mom said I'm not finding peace in the Iron Bowl loss. Hey, listen, I ain't got nothing negative to say about Auburn, nothing but respect. They played a heck of a game tonight. But I'm telling you, man, in those spaces, right, get to that, like a wounded heart, greatest fear is being held accountable for their dysfunction. They don't want to be held accountable. They ain't. They gonna deny it because they want to walk around like they got it together. And if we just be, man, listen, if we simply just be honest and be honest with ourselves, man, nobody got it together. I don't know why we try to put this front on like we got it together. Nobody got it together. There's nobody that got 100% everything together. We all need people. We need people. Everybody, like I got areas where I need to lean on some people. Some people can lean on me in certain areas. Nobody got it together. So stop walking around and try to create this false narrative, right? This fake news like you got it together. And deal with you. Like sit down and deal with you. You know what bothers you. Like don't try to act like because you're making that decision like you're just gonna you're just gonna run from it or you're just gonna suppress it and act like it didn't happen. No, you got to deal with that. You got to deal with it. Sit down and deal with it. You know what's bothering you. Everybody, the people know what bothering them. They know what their dysfunction are. And if you don't take that time, slow down so you can get accountable to understand what that is. All right. Alexander said, what does being held accountable mean? Right. So what I mean by being held accountable, right? Being held accountable means this, right? So I'm gonna use this example, right? And I used this example before. My mom, there was a time when I was I was a single dad going through ROTC where I got picked up and was getting ready to get commissioned. And I was struggling, man. I was struggling. I didn't know it at the time. I was suffering from PTSD. My son had separation anxiety. I was dealing with depression and anxiety. And my mom called one time and she just mentioned, she was like, hey, you know, me and your dad was praying. And, you know, if you ever need to bring my son with me, my son to them so that, you know, they're there for me. Right now, me in that space I was in, right. I had a wounded ear, wounded heart. I took that as them saying I wasn't a good parent. But that wasn't the case. They was offering help. They saw that I needed help. But me, I was like, dang, I got it together. I got it figured out because I was used to making things happen. I took pride in having things together and doing things. And I took pride in it, right? But, right, I was offended by what they were saying to me. They was really, eventually a couple months later, I ended up taking my son so that I mean, because I almost rolled myself down to the ground. But being held accountable means I had to get to that space to where I was in the wrong. I had to deal with me in that moment. I had to deal with, it wasn't them attacking me. It was me being easily offended because I was listening from wounded ears. They wasn't coming at me being, they never said anything about me being a parent. As a matter of fact, they always cheered me on and applauded me for that. But I heard something different, right? So I had to make myself accountable for my role or how I was thinking in that situation. Now, you take somebody who has a wounded heart, a lot of times they're not going to get to a space to where they want to be held accountable for it. Because now, who likes to be, no, first of all, nobody likes to be wrong. Nobody likes being wrong. And I'm going to go ahead on and say that again, but nobody likes being wrong. And I don't care how they try to play it. But nobody enjoy being wrong, right? So when you start talking about accountability, when you get somebody that embraces accountability, they are a disciplined person. That doesn't mean that they like what they're being held accountable for, but discipline forces you to understand the benefits of being held accountable, right? But nobody likes being wrong. But we got to get to a space, and especially with ourselves, when we start talking about healing and forgiveness, right? We got to get to a space to where we accept the role that we played and the things that we done, right? We own it. We don't make no excuse. We don't do no see what happened was. We don't do none of that, right? We fully take ownership of that, and we don't sit around and make excuses for it. And that's really just taking ownership. So, man, I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate you guys rocking with your boy. Man, tonight was good. I can't even believe we've been talking for this long because this conversation just been a real good conversation. I would tell you, go check me out, man, on my social media platforms you see here on here at The Conversation 98, The Conversation 98 on Instagram, at 98 Conversation on Twitter, The Conversation 98 on Facebook. Make sure you go and you like, share, follow, subscribe, do all of that thing. And on TikTok at The Conversation _98. Hey, I would tell you, man, if tonight, shout out to Nita, man. Thank you for the inspiration for it tonight. Just through your conversation, God used you to bless me to be able to talk about this. But hey, you guys have a great and wonderful, wonderful evening. Talk to you later. Look forward to seeing you next week. God bless.